Okay, so we're learning Igeres haTeshuva, chapter Yud Aleph 11 on page Kuf. It's the second shir on this chapter. To refresh our memories, the Alter Rebbe here speaks about the humility on part of the person in the process called Tshuva Tata, but then he shifts and he introduces Simcha. In other words, we in this Igeres haTeshuva until now, we haven't mentioned Simcha. I don't believe there's even a mention of Simcha one time until now. And this is towards the ends of the Igeres. It's just chapter 11 and 12. It finishes. So it's interesting and important to realize that. Why is that? Possibly. So this I didn't hear from Rabbi Yoel. This is my own thinking. That for Simcha to be truly appreciated, when you go through a process of tshuva, again, like you asked me before the shir, then it becomes real. In other words, when you're real and you realize, I mean us, when we realize our shortcomings and we deal with them, not just we flip service, we do something about it, then there's simcha. Then there's simcha. It's practically, I had a struggle, I had an issue, I held myself back, I worked on myself, I changed. It's it's a Gavaldik Gazach. My wife and I talk about this. We're married, Baruch Hashem, 40 years, and we ask each other. I ask her more than she asks me. Have I changed for the good? You get married on the younger side. You have children. You have a family. You have parnasa, and you have all of life's issues. 40 years later, you take a look and you say, "No, we're talking about now, personal. Have you changed in areas where, and number two, have you changed because of your spouse? Has your spouse helped you change? I don't know. To me, it's important. It's important because we want to leave over for the next generation and the next generation something that they could look back on and said, our parents came from here. Look how they developed, and and we could learn from that and emulate it and all that. So, parents, I believe, should take some time to make such a cheshbon, in private and when they go out or whatever, to have I helped you change? Have you helped me change? And that's part of a relationship, and there's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's very, very healthy, I think. So, you know, and when you identify an area too where you see that brings you simcha. It brings you simcha. In other words, I got married. I was so and so. I had a weakness in this area, and now 40 years later, looking back, like I say to my wife, to say that I don't have, an urge here and there, whether it be, impatience or anger or whatever the issue is, haughtiness, whatever the character issue is. But I've tamed it, and you've really helped me tame it because I listen to you in this area because you're more refined in that area. And I hope that you learned something from me. And when you reflect back on it, you feel good about it. It does bring simcha. I don't know. What's your feeling on that thought, Isser? Since it's you and I alone, so we could share. Go ahead. What's your thought?
Um, I think the simcha from teshuva is inherent, meaning that when you do teshuva, you're a different person, and you feel close to Kadosh Baruch Hu because you've done the work to repair what you messed up in the past. Somebody, there's a word that says why on Yom Kippur are we singing? We're singing. The Chassidish word is it feels good to get clean.
Very good.
It's
I
what you
like
sing
it.
in the shower. It feels good to get clean.
Yeah, I like that word. Yeah, so Menashe, please mute yourself. So Simcha is so now let's go back to the text. Now Rebbe says here that in conjunction with the Tshuva Tato, the Gama Simcha boy Bashem Shteim biyachad. Now, I didn't say this yesterday. I'm saying it now. Why is he emphasizing Shteim biyachad? Actually, I did say it, but Shteim biyachad. Because ordinarily, the mode of joy, of simcha, and the mode of hachno, humility, subjecting your taivas, it's not simchadik. I want to eat as much as I want. I want to sleep as much as I want. I want to do what I want. We say, come on, control yourself. You're not a behema. It's not healthy for you. And you know as a physician how we struggle in so many areas with health and issues constantly. So shteim biyachad, having a simultaneous joy and frustration, let's call it, is a chidush. Now, by someone who's a Beinani, like in chapter 1 of Tanya, Dalfin Rebbe brings the Zohar of chapter 34, that there's two compartments, the Nefesh Elokis, Nefesh Abamis, and therefore just, realize where it's coming from. And then you can have Simcha, and you can have, Meridus. But here in Igeres haTeshuva, he's talking to one and the same person, because here we're talking about a haTeshuva, which I said yesterday is each and every one of us. And why? Because the Yetzer Hara, called in Alter Rebbe's terminology, the Nefesh Abamis and the Nefesh Elokis, are mixed. You're a haTeshuva. You know what you did wrong. That's Nefesh Abamis. Yet you're pulling yourself away and you're working on that. That's Nefesh Elokis. It goes hand in hand. Here the question is, how can the two go together? And this is why here Dalfin Rebbe says that he says in the second on page Kuf, in the second from the beginning of the second line, he says when you combine the concept of belief and trust, like I told you the difference yesterday, you said a good word about that. Now here he inserts, in other words, when we know that Hashem wants this and he's open to this, and it's not like you're coming to him, begrudgingly. Like when you come to a person and say, please forgive me, I'm sorry. So you go into that situation knowing, I did a no, and this guy, and he pardoned me once, and pardoned me another time, forget it. The third time he's not going to do it. If he does it, he's going to say you don't really mean it, you're a bluffer, you're a faker, and therefore his pardoning is not really truthful completely. There's always a roshem, a negative roshem, a negative impression left. Alter Rebbe says in Nochen liach batuach b'Hashem b'li sofek usfek sveika, that since Hashem is Rav l'sloyach, he is the abundant of mercy, he definitely forgives you completely. And that's such a chidush, and at the same and what's the result Isser of that? That's why you should have simcha. The simcha having simcha from a struggle is good, but it's still limited. Why? Because the struggle schleps you into the situation of the negativity, and you're grappling with it. So yes, you succeeded. So as far as your avodah, that you worked hard, okay, the Gemara says, a person who wants one measure of his own avodah better than Yoni 9 measures of others. The Gemara says, if you reject and hate gifts, you live longer. And the Rebbe, by the way, I think I told you this once, was very makpid and careful. He never accepted gifts. If they gave it to the library, fine. To the Chabad collection, fine. People wanted to always give him silver bechers and silver this and silver that. Anyway, so there is something to avoida b'koyach atzmai. But the Alter Rebbe says here, yes, that something will lead to the greater accomplishment that Hashem is Rav L'Sleach. So to put it into your words, from before the Shir, the Rav L'Sleach is analogous to the global redemption. Those are your words, your language. The Rav L'Sleach is not a normal expectation. When you goof up, you pay the price. Like I told you, you speed, you get a ticket. There's no two ways about it. You smoke, you drink, you're taking big risks. You're overweight, same things. Whatever it is. We know what we're doing. We're not foolish. So then to say that the Eibishter will see how hard you're working, and therefore he says, come, my dear, my kinderlach, come. Talk to me. Rav L'Sloyach. So I'm pointing out this Nakuda now, this point, which is different than yesterday, an add-on. That the Rav L'Sloyach is not a second tier. Nebuch, you have no situation. You come to God on Yom Rishon Yom Kippur, but Rav L'Sloyach, he'll forgive you. That's the way, by the way, most people, I would say, look at the Yom HaNoroyim. Hashem is so nice, so he even put up with my nonsense and forgive me. The Alter Rebbe's vart is very different. He says, the essence of God, the content of Hashem is, quote, Rav L'Sloyach. What does that mean? That means he doesn't get fathomed by you asking and asking again. Because he's Rav L'Sloyach of Harachamim, and the language in Rachamecha Harabim, the adjective, B'Rachamecha, God, with your mercy, save us. We don't say that every day in the Hameir La'oretz after Baruch Hu. We say B'Rachamecha Harabim in Tehillim. That's a verse in Tehillim, Kuf Yotes, famous story to Rab Nachman of Breslev. The Alter Rebbe once touched the Alter Rebbe said, B'Rachamecha Harabim, God, on you is great mercy. The mercy is on you that you keep us in Golus. Rab Nachman heard it. He said, if he wasn't the Alter Rebbe, the Balatanya, the Reb Shnei Zalman, I would excommunicate him. How can you say such a thing? It's like the Gemara in Tainus with Chayni Amago. He draws a circle. He says, God, I'm not leaving here until you give the Jews you chutzpinyak. You're telling God? Who are you? So what does the Gemara say? If he wouldn't be chayni, he would be excommunicated. But he's chayni amago. Oh. The Breslever, Reb Nachman said the same thing. The tradition is about the Alter Rebbe. It's a mercy on God. What kind of words is this? So why am I saying that? Rav L'Sleach is not just an adjective, a behavior. It's a noun. God is the abundant of mercy. So, that is the chiddush in a sense that he speaks here. From that perspective, if you understand that and you relate to it, there could be true simcha together with the frustration, because you identify now with, and he uses the words ho'amuna v'abitochen, to have faith and trust that your heart will be cleansed and pure, because Hashem wants this, and Hashem loves us. He's chesed, and he is, quote, Rav L'Sloyach. Let's continue now. We are 5-6 lines from the top. As we'd say in every tefillah Yudches, tefillah Shmonesrei, take if shemavakshim slach lonu. As soon as we request, God, please pardon us, etc., chuli, we say, Baruch Ato Hashem, blessed is Hashem, Chanun Hamar B'Lesleach, who's gracious and bestows the abundance of mercy. Mar B'Lesleach, not just Chanun L'Sloach. Hamar B'Lesloach. The same, because God is Rav L'Sloach. V'harei. Sovek Baruchas L'Hokel. The Alter Rebbe is now going into, he's asking a rhetorical question on himself from a halacha. We know that when it comes to whether you're a doubt of making a blessing, a bracha, you take the lenient opinion because it's with the Rabbanon, Sofek brachos lahakol. If you don't know if you made a bracha or not, you don't make the brachas because it's Sofek, you're makel, you're lenient. Mishum chash bracha levatola, right? Because of a concern that you'll say a bracha in vain, God's name in vain. So the question is, Yoini, what's the Alter Rebbe asking in himself? How can we say Baruch Ato Hashem Chanun Hamar Belisloyach? Yoini, we say this 3 times a day, 365 every day. Did we once think about what he says here? How can we say such a bracha, such a blessing? You're sure God forgives you? Really? How do you know? This is a rhetorical question in himself. And what's the answer? The answer is because since God is the abundance of mercy, there's no question, is there, from the abundance of mercy perspective, he forgives you. If he's just ordinary forgiveness, like a human, similar to a human being, you're right. Maybe he won't forgive you. He'll say, go fly a kite. I forgave you already twice. Go. You're a faker. You're a bluffer. You don't mean it. But since Hashem is Rav L'Sloyach, and that's why the terminology in the bracha is Baruch Ato Hashem Chanun Hamar L'Sloyach. The grace comes from the abundance of mercy. Again, that's not an adjective, only an adjective. It's a noun. That is the God that I'm addressing in the Shmoneh Esrei, and from that perspective, that's who he is. In other words, here, Isser, listen to this. It's not like I'm asking God for something more than what Hashem is. This is Hashem. Hashem is Rav L'Sloyach. You see, the regular frum Jew thinks, no, Hashem schar v'einish, and that's true. Reward and punishment. And when you goof up, you ask for forgiveness, you bang away, al chait, or shamnu, and all that, and hopefully God forgives you. Says the Alter Rebbe, you have it all wrong. You have it all wrong. It's backwards. If you understand and if you identify that God is Rav L'Sloyach, so of course Char V'Einish is important, and of course it's basic Torah. But nevertheless, you could be assured that you'll get slicha from a God that is a God Rav L'Sloyach. If God was only slicha and not Rav L'Sloyach, you couldn't be sure. Because then it depends on your box. It depends on your conditions. And one day I do well, one day I do not well. And that's what Rosh Hashanah Kippur is. I'm asking and I'm arguing and positioning. Let's continue inside. Elo is the response to his own rhetorical question. Elo ain't kan shum safek klal. There's no doubt here that you might not be forgiven. Me'achar shebikashnu, since we asked, we requested, slach lonu mechal lonu. So since we exerted effort in not just banging, but really requesting, forgive us, pardon us, look at this. If we would have not reverted and sinned again, we would immediately be redeemed. As we say in the next bracha, that's the connection of the two brachas in the Shmoneh Esrei. Goyal Yisrael. You hear the point here. We say, blessed are you God, the Redeemer of Israel. So what do we think normally we daven? Hashem as the Redeemer is going to bring Mashiach. The Alter Rebbe says it's personal. That if you relate to Hashem as Mar L'Sloyach, then you have Geula in your life. Geula is, like you said, Isser before, cleanliness, and a cleanliness that brings Simcha vis-a-vis the Tshuva. So that's why you say...
That's what the Rebbe always said. The Rebbe said that we're the ones that have to bring the glory. We have to bring the Mashiach.
Yes.
Not to wait for Hashem.
Right.
That's what he used to say. We are going to bring the Mashiach.
Yeah, but he's talking about through our Avodah Pratis. The Rebbe Yoni, at the end of the first mimer that he said in January 1951, that was kind of the official day he accepted the leadership of Chabad after the previous Rebbe passed away a year before. So at the end, he broke down. He was very emotional, b'chlal, at that mimer, and he said, you can listen to it. It's in Yiddish, but you can hear his emotions. He says there is the Geula Pratis and the Geula Klolis. So he spoke a lot about the Geula Klolis, the general redemption, Mashiach, and then he says it's also connected with our own Geula, and we have to get out of our own Golos. And he spends time on that in a very emotional way. And we Hasidim understood from then that this was a call to our generation, which continues today until Bias HaMashiach, till the actual arrival of Mashiach, that you can't separate the two. See, there have been philosophies that have separated the two. And the Rebbe Shita of Pi Chabad that he saw from the Alter Rebbe on is they're interconnected. And that's what I was telling Isser before the Shir. He asked me a good question. You know, if the avoid of Tshuva Tato is more limited and conditional and in the box, how does that lead to a Geula Klolis? You know, how does that lead to a Tshuva Law, which is like a general Geula? And that's what he's saying here, because even the Tshuva Tato here, its objective is Rav L'Sloyach. Its objective is vis-a-vis my avodah. I'm connecting to a Hagad that is Rav L'Sloyach. And Rav L'Sloyach is the equivalent of the Geula Klolis, the general Geula. V'harei, continue. Afilu b'midas basav adam, we find even in the human condition, Cain shetzarech ha'adam limchul teikav miyad, a person should immediately forgive and pardon a person who hurt him. Umiyachim avakshim emenu mechila, and as soon as you ask mechila, he should forgive the person. Look at the Alter Rebbe's words. V'lo yehei achzori, he shouldn't be cruel. Milimchel, from forgiving the person. And he brings a Gemara, even if someone mistakenly, whatever, cuts off someone's hand, the Gemara says you should forgive him. And if you request forgiveness from someone 3 times, and he doesn't forgive you, you don't have to ask anymore for forgiveness. This is the actual halacha. Now he asks a question from the story in Tanakh with the Givoinim. Shabikish David HaMelech Sholem Mehem Bechila Biyad Shol Shehemis Es HaGivoinim. David HaMelech asked the Givoinim for forgiveness on behalf of Shol, who killed the Givoinim, and they didn't want to forgive him. David Aleim, David decreed upon them, they shouldn't come into the Jewish community. Why? Shehem Rachmanim. The Gemara says in Yavamas, I believe, that the 3 traits of a Jew, and one is Rachmanim, merciful. Kedisha B'Peidik Ches, the Yavamas, yes. So the fact that the Givoinim did not, David said, you guys aren't Jewish. There's not Jewish blood in you. If you were Jewish, real Jewish blood, you would forgive. So what does the Alter Rebbe bring? He brings the point that forgiveness is part of the Jewish experience, and understanding it deeper and more clear, he says, because God is the God of forgiveness. So if this is so, he brings these 2 Gemaras in Bava Kama, and over here in Yavamas, to say that look at Hashem expects of human beings to forgive each other. So needless to say, Hashem is definitely, how much more so, halachas kama v'kama, Adam Fenaitim, the zenith of the symbol, the prototype of forgiveness. Oh, I guess I jumped the gun. The Alter Rebbe now says, and we praise and we thank, we bless God that he is the graceful in being the abundance of forgiveness. Hamar betaike. Alter Rebbe says, yes, those words, hamar are very precise. U'kameshikosav be'ezer, as it says in Ezer, v'rav l'sloyach, God is the abundance of forgiveness. Dahainu, shebemidas basav adam, in a human condition, im yechte ish le'ish, if one person sins against another, and the person asks for forgiveness, and he forgives him, and then the person goes back to his old ways, it's very difficult that he should forgive him a second time. Surely, if he does it a third and fourth time repeatedly. But God's attribute is different. There's no difference between the first or the 1,000th time. Because God's attribute of mercy and his attributes, his holy attributes, they aren't in the category of limitation, and it has a box. Ella, next page, top of page 200, they're infinite. As it says, God's mercy, loicholu, has no end. We'll stop here, and we will continue Mitzvah Shem on Shabbos, on Monday. In Mitzvah Shem, it's Shabbos Mevorchim. So Isser, have a great Shabbos, and Betzach Choisal's good. Make Achsidish Shav HaBringen, and give Moshe my regards, and say L'chaim, and Menashe, you too, and only good things. Zai gesund. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good Shabbos.
Shabbos.